Before I begin this morning, I'd like to thank you all, first of all, for joining us here today. I'd like to acknowledge several of my colleagues from the House of Assembly are here with us this morning. Several of you, thanks for coming. I'd like to also acknowledge the Honourable Derek Daly, who's also the MHA for the Isles of Notre Dame, who's here with us today, and also Minister Jackman, who's also joining us this morning. Good to see you both, and thank you all for coming. And I'd also like to take a moment before I get into my remarks as well, just to acknowledge my predecessor in the Department of Transportation Works, the Honourable Tom Henderson, who did much of the work on some of the matters we're going to discuss this morning, and carried the file until I came into the department recently. So I'd like to acknowledge his work as well as the previous minister. I'm very pleased to be here today to announce that several new custom-built ferries will be added to the provincial fleet to benefit communities throughout Newfoundland and Labrador. The provincial government will achieve this by issuing 2 requests for proposals in the coming weeks that will make new vessels available and ensure a high level of service for many years to come. Ferry services across the Strait of Belle Isle and along the coast of Labrador will be enhanced by the addition of multi-purpose ferries to transport passengers, vehicles, and freight. These new vessels will be the most versatile vessels ever deployed to Labrador by the provincial government. Ferry-dependent communities throughout the province will also benefit from the addition of a new 42-metre swing vessel that will be used to replace ferries during times of repairs and refit. And our request for proposal will also ensure a new vessel will be constructed in the coming years to replace the MV Captain Earl Windsor that services Fogo Island and Change Islands. To fully understand these RFPs that are being announced here today, I want to take a few minutes to give you some background and some further explanation to put these in context. And I'll begin by discussing the RFP to construct the 42-metre swing vessel as well as the new ferry for Fogo Islands and Change Islands. This government began ferry vessel replacement activities by awarding a shipbuilding contract in 2008 to the Kiewit facility located in Marystown on the Burin Peninsula. The contract engaged the company to construct 2 42-metre ferries, with each ferry having the capacity for 16 vehicles and 80 passengers. The process of seeking out qualified shipbuilders to build these boats within the province revealed that Kiewit facility in Marystown was the only facility in Newfoundland and Labrador that could construct ships of this scale. In March 2011, the construction of these 2 vessels was completed at a total cost of $27.5 million per vessel. After these vessels were completed, the provincial government fully intended to have Peter Kiewit construct a 3rd 42-metre vessel at its Marystown facility that would be similar to the first 2 vessels. However, after the motor vessel Grace Sparks and the motor vessel Hazel McIsaac went into service, Peter Kiewit International approached the provincial government for additional compensation on these 2 vessels. And before I move on, I would like to take a moment, now that I've mentioned the motor vessel Hazel McIsaac, to acknowledge the very recent passing of Hazel McIsaac, who just passed on Friday past. Both Hazel McIsaac and Grace Sparks were strong, noteworthy women of Newfoundland and Labrador, and I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge her passing and to pass along our sympathies to her family. In May of 2012, the company agreed to have discussions on the terms for construction of a 3rd vessel, the 3rd 42-metre vessel, and to seek out an agreement regarding the additional compensation that they had requested in another set of negotiations. So discussions with the company, and since that time, and regarding the construction of a new 42-metre vessel, has not produced an acceptable set of terms, and the negotiation process has continued to delay our ferry replacement. When months of negotiation did not result in getting both sides closer to an agreement, which was our goal, the government engaged in a due diligence process, a due diligence exercise that sought out benchmarking estimates from shipyards in various parts of the world for the purpose of comparison. And this was done to ensure that our expectations about price was reasonable, and I can tell you that all three shipyards offered very competitive proposals. And there were three shipyards that we sought out in the due diligence exercise. In light of this, the provincial government will issue an RFP that will invite companies to compete to contract to build the 42-metre swing vessel and also the replacement vessel, the new vessel for the Fogo Island and Change Islands ferry. This approach ensures government can advance vessel replacement while also maintaining the possibility of building ferries right here in Newfoundland and Labrador. Shipyards will have the option to submit proposals for one vessel or for both vessels. And by allowing companies this option to bid on one or both vessels, the provincial government is providing opportunities for shipyards to offer their most competitive pricing based on the opportunity to engage in a higher volume of shipbuilding activity if they so desire. It is important to realize that this RFP does not change the fact that Peter Kiewit International has the opportunity to build vessels here in Newfoundland and Labrador. The company can submit proposals to this RFP, and the provincial government encourages Kiewit to do so. The RFP will be issued in the coming weeks. Proposals will be accepted for a 90-day period, and the process will ensure that new vessels are serving this province in the years to come under the best possible terms. I'm now going to discuss the request for proposals for the second aspect of our announcement today, which is the combination passenger, freight, and vehicle ferry service for the Strait of Belle Isle and coastal Labrador. And I'll provide you some background on that service as well. And at present, the ferry service for the Strait of Belle Isle and for coastal Labrador communities are provided by a combination of two privately owned vessels and two vessels that are owned by the province. And they are operated by two separate contractors, and I'll explain. The ferry service across the Strait of Belle Isle is currently contracted to Labrador Marine, which provides the service with the motor vessel Apollo, a vessel that it owns and it operates. The Apollo is capable of taking passengers and vehicles, but the only freight it accepts comes aboard on transport trucks. The Apollo will be under contract until January of 2013. The department intends to continue this service by issuing a tender for a ferry contract that will last until 2016, and I'll explain that further in a few moments. This vessel is supported by the motor vessel Sir Robert Bond in the wintertime, a vessel that is owned by the government of Newfoundland and Labrador, but operated through a contract with CAI Nunatsiavut Marine. Passenger services for communities on the coast of Labrador is provided by the MV Northern Ranger, and that's a vessel that is owned by the province and operated under contract to CAI. The vessel has limited freight capacity and no capacity to take vehicles. It is essentially a ferry vessel that has very limited capacity, can only carry approximately 100 pallets of freight at any given time. Freight services for the communities on the coast of Labrador is contracted to Labrador Marine, which provides the service using the Astron, the motor vessel Astron, a vessel that it owns and operates. And the Astron is strictly a freight vessel, and it does not take passengers. The provincial government is now seeking a single contract for all Labrador ferry services and will require contracts to provide services with new, custom-built ice-class vessels with roll-on, roll-off capacity that can take passengers, that can take vehicles, and can take freight. This service is expected to run for a 15-year term, and it will begin in April 2016. This contract will make Happy Valley Goose Bay the headquarters for the Labrador ferry service, which will result in faster and more efficient service for the communities in the region. The Department of Transportation Works is issuing a request for proposals to secure such an arrangement and is arranging the contract for existing services to conclude by 2016. And this will give time frame necessary to allow contractors to build new vessels to serve Labrador. This RFP as well will be issued in the coming weeks, and proposals will be accepted for this RFP for a 90-day period, and this process will ensure that communities on the coast of Labrador receive the best possible service using the most versatile vessels ever deployed to Labrador by the provincial government. It should be noted that this RFP creates the potential for additional work for Kiewit, located in Marystown, if service providers decide to partner with Kiewit when submitting their proposals. I'm now going to pass the floor over to my colleague, the Minister responsible for Labrador Affairs, Minister McGrath.
Good morning. Thank you, Minister Davis. Today's announcement is further evidence of the provincial government's commitment to providing transportation infrastructure that meets the economic and social needs of Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. Ferry services for coastal Labrador and across the Strait of Belle Isle will be key to the continued growth and prosperity in the region. Providing new multi-purpose vessels will ensure comprehensive service that can address changing industrial, commercial, and commuter needs, which is in keeping with the goals of our Northern Strategic Plan of Labrador. I'm pleased that these new vessels will be the most versatile ferries ever developed and deployed to Labrador by the provincial government. Our government is prepared to invest tens of millions of dollars over this 15-year period to ensure strong passenger and freight ferry service for the north coast of Labrador and across the straits. Clearly, we continue to remain focused on the needs of Labrador and Labradorians and remain responsive to the needs of communities. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister McGrath. Again, I'm very pleased that we're now advancing ferry replacement activities in a way that will produce the best possible ships at the best possible cost within the best possible time frames that in the years to come will provide the best possible service to the people of Newfoundland and Labrador. As I mentioned, my department will issue both of these requests for proposals in the near future, and we intend to award the contracts in the months to follow.